so there is a lot of attention to what we're doing. It requires some legitimate work from us. Sometimes it's going to be coordinating things, and it might be many times it could be managing tasks, but also making, and I see it as an opportunity, as I said when we first launched the working groups, it's an opportunity to identify and coordinate things that are already happening. So sometimes the goals and the projects that we have listed, they're not aspirational, they're actually things, concrete things that either agencies or nonprofits or different organizations are actually working on. And we use the G3 action framework and this and our structure to try and measure and chart the course of these projects getting done. In some ways, it's an opportunity to intervene. And I intervene meaning that many times, and I think Lola and Vanji see this from their bureau planning background, sometimes agencies have different values that they're counting on or different priorities that they're pushing that are in conflict. And we like to use the G3 framework as an early way to identify those things. And if they're within the government control, then it gives us an opportunity to reconcile or address where there's a gap in what an agency is doing versus what the policy that the governor and I have set out. Or in some cases, could be making sure that we're complying with legislative statute or a mandate. Some of them may require legislation. It may require, or we may believe that legislation is required. So here, the governor's coming on. But that's kind of like, you know, that's one of the things that I would say we're going to use this process to do, to try and reconcile those things so that we're moving down on the same path. And we have an early way to detect whether or not agencies are kind of off track. Sometimes it'll be clear whether or not they're underperforming in some cases. And I think that that's kind of the framework. So what we're doing is our overall effort, and thanks, Governor Hafaday.
Afternoon, Governor.
I have to do this unmute. Sorry, sorry I'm late. I was in another meeting, but
so
thank you.
So obviously the governor is leading this entire effort. And so what the structure that we've decided upon is that on a biannual basis, there will be a very structured and a reporting requirement and a convening of the governor of our different groups. And on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, we have to determine that this steering committee is going to be used to try and make sure that everybody's moving down in preparation for the meeting with the governor. So pressure will be on between the committees to make sure that everybody is moving along and is counting and documenting the progress. But twice a year, I imagine, based on my past experience, there will be a flurry of activity leading up to the points in time when we are giving the formal reports to the governor. And so this meeting, however, in talking with the governor, you know, we want to be able to go through all of the different projects and the focus areas as a steering committee, including with her presence, so that we understand what's going on. There are some projects or some areas that are going to be touched on by multiple committees. What we're doing in this first phase is to make sure that we're going to coordinate that effort so that we don't have, we're not bumping into each other, or even worse, people are doing the same things and giving more effort than necessary. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pass it on to the governor, and after that, Dr. Shelton is going, or Lauren, whoever, they're going to be introducing all of the leads for each of the committees, and then we'll talk about, you know, kind of like, at least for this first phase with the governor and I, we're likely to go in and go through each of the projects just for our knowledge, and then then we'll go be off and doing our individual work. So at this point, I'd probably want to pass it on to our governor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that we have this framework, right? Because in any kind of big project, sometimes we all get really excited and then nothing really happens after the big conference or, after the big workshop because we didn't have a framework and we're not following the framework. But, these initiatives and our working group for being green is very important. And I'm so glad that the process has gotten to the point where now, you guys all had the workshop. We've identified the initiatives that we're going to be following, and we're going to be trying to reach, and we're going to be implementing. And this steering committee group, I think, is very significant in making sure, and how it's broken down, in making sure that we do follow up with the working group and that we do follow up with the progress and the process of where we are in achieving the goals and objectives that we've put forward. Um, and I think that's very I think it's very significant for our island, that we have this. This is a big statement to our people, to our community, that we're very serious about the cleanliness of our environment. We're very serious about making sure that we have food sustainability, and that we are working forward to being much more efficient, much more alternate energy. Just the whole thing about protecting our environment and making sure we're addressing issues related to climate change. So I'm very appreciative of the Lieutenant Governor and Austin in taking the lead on this. As I have said, our administration is very committed, and we're showing this with support in whatever resources that both, I think, what the Lieutenant Governor and Austin and also the whole committee see in terms making this a reality, right? And making sure that the projects are being done, and making sure we're not just talking about, oh, it's really great to cycle, and we're not really making aware about recycling. Or, oh yeah, it's very good that we have clean air, but we're not really doing anything to make sure clean air is there. Or that, hey, yeah, we love our ocean, but there's still a lot of trash in there. Just things like that. And I think it begins with our own parks. I'll tell you, that's one thing that, I know the Lieutenant Governor is very serious about the beautification task force. In fact, we were just joking when he was running for Lieutenant Governor. I said, Josh, your only responsibility is beautification task force. But hey, there's a lot of work in beautification task force. It may sound like, oh, it's just to be beautiful, but there's a lot of work with beautification task force. And it's not to diminish, but sometimes we joke around about that. But and of course, I always joke around about the first thing in our island to make it beautiful and to save our vegetation is tear down that cadena del amor that's killing our vegetation. No, it's looking like we're dinosaur time, right? If you look at that cadena del amor, it's all that silhouette of the dinosaur time. Anyway, that's my pet peeve. So, but that's part of beautification, and it's not just the fact it's beautification, it's the fact that we're protecting our vegetation. It's like killing the oxygen out of those vegetation. So, I mean, I just point that out to say that, hey, don't diminish anything, because you'll realize it's a lot of work, and it's very significant and very important to our island. So I am very excited. And I thank you for this opportunity to attend your steering committee meeting. And I have great confidence in the leadership that this is going to happen. I just get excited because, 4 years from now, 8 years from now, we're going to say, hey, the legacy of Governor Lou and Lieutenant Governor Josh is a clean environment, and that we have alternative energy, and that the Cadena del Amor is all gone. Anyway, that's just my point. But anyway, thank you again, and I look forward to some really good outcomes of this working committee. And it's here to stay, and it's a very valuable circumstances that should stay for our island. So thank you.
Thanks, Governor. Austin or Lauren, did you want to do the introductions of all of the members of the steering committees?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. So we did some slight restructuring again, just to help facilitate the working group to continue to move forward. And so I'll go through the teams and say who their leads are. So with Healthy and Prosperous Communities, we have Lola Leon Guerrero and Melanie Mendiola. For Educated, Capable, and Compassionate Island, we have Dr. Mary Okada and Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, and assisting them as Vice Chair is Melanie Brennan. With Sustainable Homes, Utilities, and Transportation, Lieutenant Governor, would you like me to say their departments? Sorry, I didn't do that earlier.
I'll leave it to you. Fine.
Okay. So just to go back, Lola Leon Guerrero from BSP and Melanie Mendiola from GITA for Healthy and Prosperous Communities, Educated, Capable, and Compassionate Island, Dr. Mary Okada from GCC, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee from the Guam Legislature, Melanie Brennan from DYA. For Sustainable Homes, Utilities, and Transportation, we have Vince Ariola from DPW, Brent Weesey from the Guam Building Code Council, Rebecca Respicio as the Vice Chair from Guam Energy Office. For Thriving Natural Resources, we have Vanji Lujan from GWA and the Governor's Commission on Climate Change Resiliency, and Fren Castro from University of Guam Sea Grant. For Sustainable Alliances, we have Melvin Wonpet Borja from the Commission on Decolonization, and Mayor Melissa Savares from Dedado and the President of the Mayor's Council. For Data and Public Engagement, we have Dr. Ricky Hernandez from GIAA and Rindrati Limtiako from Pacific Daily News, as well as Jonas Makapinlek from UOG as their Vice Chair. And lastly, we have Kyle Dehelig, who will be our chair for the Youth Ambassadors. Welcome everyone, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And I think at this time we will turn it over to Dr. Shelton.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you to all of our new steering committee members for being here today and being willing to work together on the G3 action framework. I'd also like to just mention that we have a few of our G3 team members in the room with us today too. Corey Santos and Amanda Dedicatoria are on our communications team, and Tori Santos and Miracle McGoal are also on our G3 team. I just wanted to echo a few things that the Lieutenant Governor mentioned about the international recognition that we're getting with the G3 initiative. We've been saying for a few months now that G3 places Guam at the global forefront of island sustainability. So we've been part of a few events now during the UN General Assembly, Global Goals Week, and Climate Week, which has happened in a flurry of events, all virtual over the past few weeks. So we had our own virtual action framework signing event, which was attended by over 100 people on Zoom and many more people watching the live streams. Governor Leon Guerrero was the keynote speaker at the Island Innovation Virtual Conference And it was really great to have Guam represented at that level. There were 2 other prime ministers from Fiji and Tuvalu, and also the president of the Federated States of Micronesia. And so for Guam to be one of the islands that are thought of as leaders in island sustainability on the list, that's really great. And also the Lieutenant Governor was a panelist on an international Local 2030 Islands Network event, alongside Congressman Ed Case from Hawaii and a few other speakers. We were also represented in the UN Sustainable Development Goals Action Zone, in the US Climate Strong Islands Network that me and my team were participating in and representing Guam. So everybody's really excited that Guam has this framework, that we have the local implementation strategy for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They're impressed with how rapidly it's gone forward since the thought was just signed into the executive order last September. And we got up there in New York, and the Lieutenant Governor committed us as part of the Local 2030 Islands Network. We've made rapid progress, and I think the world is taking notice of that. So we're really excited for all the global partnerships and the strategies that will be shared with us and the lessons that we can share with the rest of the world. Just a couple other action items that we are moving forward on the G3 team that we have here at the Center for Island Sustainability. Oh, and by the way, just want to say thank you again to the Governor and Lieutenant Governor for assigning this coordination facilitation role to us here at UOG. To be working with all of you to move G3 forward. We have the G3 Circular Economy Makerspace and Innovation Hub, which we're actively trying to open at the Chamorro Village right now. And the main point of contact will be Miracle Mughal, who we're leveraging off of a National Science Foundation grant and also contributions from the Guam Economic Development Authority. So we're going to have a space where entrepreneurs can come in and have access to tools and turn what are traditionally trash products into marketable products. And we hope to stimulate new green economic industries there. There will also be a space for online classes or in-person classes once we can get back in there. So it's going to be a really exciting innovation hub that will connect entrepreneurs to resources like the Small Business Development Center, to GITA, and the Guma Business Incubator that we'll be working with. We have aquaculture projects moving forward. We were able to get a new grant from our Sea Grant program to hire a full-time extension agent in aquaculture for the next 2 years. So we're working closely with the GITA-led aquaculture task force that the governor created. And we are almost done setting up our first aquaculture backyard system, and we hope to make several more around the island. And then we also have one person on the G3 team that has been attending the Lieutenant Governor's interagency on homelessness meetings. We'll be increasing food security in areas with vulnerable populations like the houseless and at-risk communities, to plant community gardens, edible landscapes, and also connect people to social services at the same time. So that's what we have going on immediately. And so combining, I think the governor had a really nice line at our Action Framework signing event that G3 is the local action that we are taking to make a global impact. So thank you all very much for being part of that.
Thanks, Austin. Now, when many people, I think almost everybody here was at ground zero when we convened almost 90 folks back at the Guam Museum, going over the 17 goals. And so what we did after that was kind of set up a framework. And so we established, the different working groups established 10+ year goals, 3 to 5 year SMART objectives, action items that could be accomplished during fiscal year 20, which just ended, and into fiscal year 21. And then also determined a metric on how we would, as a baseline, measure our progress. In addition to that, we also identified action leads. The action leads, some of it came from organizations or individuals already were working projects or have it as their part of their agency mission or something that they've identified that they want to pursue. And then a column of partnerships in which other agencies or individuals were listed that are participating or would be primary stakeholders for each of these projects. And that's kind of the framework that that was set forth. The working groups came together, working group chairs came together to identify all these objectives and in some cases completed down the line of identified projects, determine the metric and determine who would be leading as our way of measuring. And so your role as chairs of these working groups is really to manage each of your teams in each of these categories. Sometimes you may be part of a project because of your agency responsibility. Oftentimes, you're going to be knowing or tracking what others are doing. That really is the framework, and reporting and monitoring and reporting to the governor, to our steering committee, but really for the governor, where we are in completing these projects or meeting the objectives that we had developed. This is a living document, and you have the discretion and authority within your working group and within your committees to add or recommend sometimes removal or amending some of the things that you're seeing. That's the authority that we're giving to you. And that's sort of the work that you'll be managing. All of this would then be coordinated through the Center for Island Sustainability and our folks that are working on G3 and put into a reporting template. And so in the big picture, Ricky Hernandez and Rudantri Limtiako will be incorporating, with the assistance and with the communication lines open and sustained by Austin and Lauren's shop, they'll be able to put that into a report, and we will be publishing this in real time. And those are things that we're going to be using the dashboard that Hawaii Green Growth created, and that dashboard will be a tool that all of us will be able to use and track. And so the steering committee meetings, and we'll go about how we want to meet. It might be very brief meetings on a monthly basis in which the leads of the different groups are just going to give us a big picture update on things going on within their area, or they will likely be used to inform the group about things we might want to add or we might want to delete. But pretty much this is meant to, the steering committee is meant to be helpful and supportive of what you're doing, but it allows all of us to really stay in touch and monitor the progress. I'll just tell you that this really is like a strategic management approach. And oftentimes I find that the steering committee meetings, and especially the biannual meetings that we'll have with the governor, you'll see a lot of competition amongst the, it's almost like peer pressure. So I did this with the courts, and I had, every time we reported the Chief Justice, judges were rushing to make sure that the reports were good enough, because we'll be compared, you'll be comparing your progress with each other. Sometimes you're gonna be letting us know some of the problems that we're having, and then we'll try and approach it from the government side. So really that's the framework that, that we're looking at. So what I'd like to, one of the things that I'd like to propose is, you know, there is a need for us to, at least in this beginning part, to go in and really be aware of what the different goals and projects are. And so what I'd like to propose is that we would coordinate a series of meetings in the next few weeks, or it might be in the next month, where we would go and basically have a read through of the projects under each of the focus areas. That would allow so you should be looking at your own projects, but it would allow you as chairs to understand whether or not there's a cross section. And there is a cross section of projects that are going to be listed in other areas. And you may decide to coordinate or sometimes barter and deal or defer to other groups to take the lead. But there might be things they're doing that might be informed with projects that are under your area. Austin, did you have anything to add to this?
Just the one thing to add is that there are a few gaps on the action framework tables. Not all of the items have an assigned lead, action lead, and also partnerships. So I think it would also be a good time to fill some of those gaps in during this process.
And I'll tell you that one of the big gaps that we saw was in the focus group number 2, Educated, Capable, and Compassionate Island. In that area, some of the sustainable development goals include justice systems, fairness in justice systems. So we know, for example, that the criminal justice side and the courts are working on a bunch of reform efforts. Those are missing right now for the framework. And so Lonnie Brendan actually is coming into this committee because of her experience, both at Frontline at DYA, but also based on her role back in the judiciary with all of the different criminal and juvenile justice efforts that are there. As an example, one of the critical things nationally for criminal justice reform is mandating that anybody that comes into the criminal justice system gets a risk assessment so that the agencies and individuals know how to treat them. In some cases, it's meant to help inform law enforcement officers about the danger that somebody may present. And many times it's going to help law enforcement officers defer people that shouldn't maybe be in justice. They might need to be in a mental health side instead. So those are the different things that are missing that will fill in the gaps. And then based on your expertise, you'll be able to see whether or not there are things that are missing. And like I said, it's a living document. So you'll be able to have the latitude as the lead to make the recommendations and to effectuate it. And so what we'd like to do is, we'll schedule a series, and I'm thinking that we'll try and keep meetings to an hour. I know that I think it's good to try and just get to the point and not to overburden everybody, because people have things that they like to do. And so what we'll do is we're gonna set up 5 meetings in which we will focus on reviewing each of the focus areas. We'll attempt to do a read through, go down. The governor will be present because the governor wants to understand and have a chance to shape the direction of these things. And then after that, and we complete the read throughs, then we can move on to our individual work. Now, because you're teams and based on time, we would ask that at least one member, we would of course like for everybody in the steering committee to be here for the 5, for each of the 5 focus areas as we review it. But at the minimum, we need at least one of you to be in attendance so that we can move things on. After we do this, there'll be a period of time where you will be able to go and flush out and make your amendments. And then we will come back on probably on a monthly basis leading up to the first briefing or report to the governor, which would be in six months from the time that we signed the framework, which was a few weeks ago. So you can count on, so in this first part, we'll have just a few bit more meetings than what we normally would have, but and sometimes there'll probably just be written submissions and then brief meetings after we get those submissions. Any questions or input so far?
So I have a question, just real quick. I was reading through our 10+ year goals, right? And I'm trying to visualize how we're going to reach these goals. And I know you have 3 to 5 year SMART objectives, action items, metrics, and so forth. So is the thought here that you look at this, say, reduce Guam's poverty rate, for example? Is the thought here that there's going to be a group in charge of doing this, and that group is sole responsibility is to make sure that there's public outreach and all this kind of stuff? Is that how it works? I'm trying to make it concrete, so so that we know where to go from here, right? And so there's some really aggressive goals here in the healthy and prosperous communities, but poverty is a very complicated goal to reduce. And so how are we going to move forward to making sure that we're really addressing this, right? Are the leaders of this particular framework going to be assigning groups to say, hey, you're in charge of this goal and this is what you're going to be doing? You're going to be meeting whatever, and you're going to make sure that these action items are being done. Or maybe you also have other ideas of how to reduce that poverty, the poverty rate. I was just kind of curious how it's going to play out.
So let me give you an example. For example, so under healthy and prosperous communities, and under that 10-year goal of reducing Guam's poverty rate, one of the SMART objectives is focused on increasing, is focused on trying to increase the number of adults that have high school diplomas. So in this regard, the goal by 2023, they're going to increase access to education for all adults without a high school diploma, or for disabled adults by increasing the number of satellite adult high school diploma programs. And then the action items, they focus in. So they're going to, the action item they're looking at for fiscal year 21 is they're going to implement satellite adult high school diploma programs in the South, targeting Mauricio and Yamatic, and in the North to target Jigo. And so in there, the action lead there is Guam Community College and the mayor's council, or the mayor's offices of those agencies. And then they'll go, and then they would have developed a metric to determine whether or not they met the goal within the fiscal year. And so some of these, you're right, it's kind of like you have these, they're big ideas, right? Like solving, it's not going to happen overnight, but the idea is to break it up into areas that we could, on a cross-discipline way, try and make some progress. Another one is trying to increase public transportation. And so one of the things is looking at coming up with a stipend program for bus passes that are going to focus in on lower income folks or even homeless folks. And so they'll try, and so they'll figure out how to develop that and what can be done within the fiscal year. They will also then, the working groups will add projects and will add things online to succeeding fiscal years based on what we're seeing, either the success or if new players are coming into the scene. So as an example, Salvation Army, Catholic Social Services, and Island Girl Power, they have a project focused on trying to address clothing and hygiene products for women and girls. And so some of it is things that they're already planning on doing. We're recognizing that work, listing it, and then having an opportunity to identify other partnerships that can help them meet their goal. Or in the big picture, seeing how we're addressing different aspects of this, you're right, very complicated poverty situation on Guam. So that's pretty much the framework. If we don't have action items, and we need to have action items, that's where the working groups will come up with things, and it'll require the leadership support from us, perhaps members of the legislature, to try and get things going, because it's also going to help us identify what we're not doing or what we think is missing from the conversation or missing from the work.
Yeah, so I guess what I was trying to figure out is how do you operationalize it, right? So like, for example, are the co-team lead coordinators going to say, just for example, reduce Guam's poverty rate, and then are they going to say to their team members, you, Michelle Crisostomo, you're in charge of this, you know, based on what their skills, and then Michelle is then going to be in charge of making sure that these action leads and these partners are working together. Is that how it's going to work? I'm just trying to,
Yes.
Okay. All right, I can sleep better now.
By the way, the governor always knows if there isn't an individual assigned to do it, it's not going to happen. So that's where she's going.
Yes, ownership.
Any questions, comments, input, Austin or Lauren so far, or any of the steering committee members? Dr. Okada.
Just very quickly, I am the G3 coordinator, so I'm here to help all of you, whether it means tracking people down or relaying information or helping you in any way. Let me know. I'm your support.
Thanks, Lauren. That's really good. That's important.
Dr. Mary.
Yeah, so just based on the example you gave regarding the poverty rate, so that particular action and goal also exists in group 2. So the information that is will be available. So if there's something that is duplicated, maybe, I mean, because we're going to be focusing on our teams, but Lauren, if you can help identify where there's a cross section of the same component, so that we don't have people going off on different ends, and it can be, you know, we can coordinate the information. I mean, because like I wouldn't, for example, at the college, I wouldn't like 4 or 5 people trying to get the same information. And rather that we just know where the cross section is, so that we can provide information not only for our group 2, but we can also populate it to the other group. If you could just tell us where those intersections are, then we'll know and coordinate with the other groups as well. That would be helpful.
Sure.
Vanjie.
Are we going to get the dashboard soon, so we have at the beginning, before we start the projects, we know what we're supposed to measure? And is it going to be specific to this, what we have in our strategy, or are we using the dashboard from Hawaii and we're using their metrics?
We make our own metrics. The dashboard is really just a platform that we can adjust for whatever the metrics are that we choose. It's using Esri.
When are we going to get it?
When are we going to get it? They are migrating. They are in the process of completing their migration to the new Esri platform right now. So they should be able to share it with us in the next month or 2, they said. But that doesn't stop us from creating the metrics that we want, and then we just plug it in and adjust the dashboard for Guam specific SDG goals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Benji. Any other questions? Fran.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I guess, how we can engage like the heads of agencies, because I know that when we were doing like this framework, it was kind of difficult for us to, you know, work together, because sometimes there's only 3 or 4 of us that come to meetings. And so maybe is there a way that you and the governor can like issue a directive that to the heads of agencies that would assign a POC like to our groups, so that there's always someone attending the meetings and providing like, you know, updates?
Absolutely. And Rob San Augustine from my office is going to be working with Lauren to, on scheduling and But you're right, Fran, I guess getting points of contact, and then in our upcoming cabinet meeting, we'll probably bring Austin and Lauren in to present to the cabinet and let them know. But this is an initiative under administration, and we're here also to make sure and find out what's going on with the agencies and making sure that they prioritize this. So yes, getting points of contact. Anything for you to add, Governor?
I'm just going to say, yes, of course we're going to push it. But what I wanted to say, Fran, it might not be the head of the agency. It might be, a delegate who that head agency really thinks would be good, right? But just to make sure that the agency that's important to move that goal is there, right? So I know there's a lead here for action lead here for the Guam, the Department of Public Health and Social Services. So it might not be art, but if it has something to do with poverty, or if it has something to do with SNAP or any of the welfare programs, he may delegate it. And it doesn't have to be the division head. It might be a staff that really knows everything, right? And that's the person that should come, because they're going to be much more helpful than, say, the head of the agency.
Yeah, if they can just assign a staff, that would be the best person to, whoever is working on whatever conservation plan, maybe that person can come and sit in the meeting and tell us about, what their progress is and how we can get them to move forward. So.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and chime in also, because I was the lead for, I guess, the healthy and prosperous, and I was dealing with the poverty and the health issue. So I actually ended up just calling up directors and ask them to assign me an individual that I can communicate with, because at the very last minute was actually when I was getting the information, but it's really just pulling information from existing strategies and state plans, because most of the projects under poverty are federally funded. So, and that's how, and then I'm just going to say everybody is busy. And so some of these things really go beyond the 8 to 5, but into the late hours. So I understand where Fran's coming from, but I also want to, like myself, we're all busy handling different things. So sometimes it could be challenging in the organization to try to participate in something. So maybe an email where we can provide the information to the individual requesting. Because there are a lot of moving parts taking place in the government line agencies. So, and there is a lot of federal funds with a lot of reporting requirements and implementation requirements.
Thanks, Lola. Any other questions? All right. Oh, Kyle, half a day.
Buenas. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Thank you for sharing your space with me. And it's been a pleasure working with Danji and Lauren and the whole team when it comes to moving our efforts so that we can actually make a true change that we want to see. But so besides that, I wanted to also include that I was appointed by the Lieutenant Governor with to assist with youth ambassadorship. So I mean, it's just a term. We haven't really defined what it actually means. But I'm hoping that I can connect with more youth members, and so that we could include them as part of the talking points, not talking points, but as part of the committees, the 5 broken down committees. And I guess in addition to that, we also want to create like a plan of how can we incorporate more intergenerational knowledge so that we have our youth involved and they're learning the steps along the way. So I'm hoping that we can work together. And if any of you guys do not have any youth members in your committee yet, connect with me. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kyle. You're right on the same page with us. And I used to be well, I was a youth before. I still am a youth, but I really do think it's important. And some of the best frameworks I've seen always had youth inclusion. And I'll just say, Vince Ariola's mom, the late Senator Elizabeth Ariola, she's the one that kind of got us in at my time when I was in the Youth Congress. And then she passed legislation to make sure that there was a youth perspective or a youth membership on a lot of the different boards and commissions. And but yes, we welcome that. And I think that I think finding folks and offering them, offering the group leads options for them to incorporate, I think for sure, that's the way to go. You're on point. Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, what we'll do, Gov, is we're going to, we'll work on our schedules. We'll know that there's gonna be at least 5 working sessions in which we're going to go over all of the projects and the objectives that we've listed in each of the various frameworks. Lauren I know has already tagged some of the projects that are listed in, that are under different frameworks. She's also managed to identify the areas that are in need of a bit more focus and attention. And I think that what we'll do is she'll go ahead and provide the working document to all of the committee members with those notes in preparation for our first review meeting. Okay, so can we, before we leave, Lauren or Austin, do you have the capacity to take a group picture of us before we leave? Part of our documentation?
Yes, Miracle, you're on that for us. Thank you.
All right, so Jonas, Phil, Rebecca, Tori, if you're still listening, Melvin, can you please put your camera on and let's just take this one before we leave.
Okay, I'm gonna go on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
All right, thank you, Governor. Do you have any departing words?
No, just let's begin.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good day. Be safe.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Wear your mask and social distance.